nature fans. It's Tuesday night and we've got another fun lineup for you. Not going to waste a lot of time with introductions. It's nice to see everybody. Let's get started. Someday I'm going to figure out how to do this smoothly, but in the meantime, you have to put up with this. Let's start from the beginning. So if you had a chance to...
Redheads. Okay.
Are we good?
Redhead Ducks.
Redhead Ducks, yes. They are moving through right now along with a lot of other species. Now some ducks have spent most of the winter with us. We've got some species, well, like some of the diving ducks, like our mergansers, our golden eyes have been with us pretty much all winter. And of course, we've got our resident mallards and our Canada geese as well. Oh, in fact, you know what? I'm gonna diverge just a little bit. I had a call last week, actually about a week and a half ago, from a gentleman who wanted me to come out and do an article on his feeding activities. And I don't know, I've got some mixed feelings on that. He's not feeding, and he's feeding primarily geese, but also the ducks that gather in downtown St. Charles as well. He's not feeding them bread, so that's good, but he is buying them cracked corn. And, you know, his position is that it's really no different from putting up a bird feeder in the yard, and he's also maintaining that he's saving the birds from starvation. Now, I don't think that's the case at all. I think anything that's living in the wild is either got to have what it takes to survive or it doesn't. If it doesn't have what it takes, it's going to put an end to those unsuccessful genes, and that'll be the end of it. But anyway, I opted to not write about his feeding activities, and I tried to encourage him to, at the very least, move around a little bit so he's not creating well, he actually is creating a feeding frenzy, but you know, birds a lot of times, well, actually all wildlife, they're going to base their reproductive capabilities are going to be based on the amount of food that's available. And if he's putting out a lot of food, that may end up, we might end up with more resident ducks and more resident geese. Because they've been able to survive. They've come through the winter with more fat on their bodies than they would have if they hadn't received those handouts. And I also found out that the feeding is going on at the pedestrian bridge here in St. Charles, which would kind of explain why there's a lot of birds that congregate there. So anyway, it's just something to consider. I know he was very, I would say almost proud of the way he said he'd have sometimes over 200 geese and ducks gathering during his feeding times. And it's a controversial issue, to say the least. I did learn, because there is a sign there that very explicitly says, do not feed the birds, do not feed the ducks, do not feed the geese. But there's no code, there's no ordinance to back that up. So people have actually called the police on him, but the police can't do anything. I don't know what the conservation police would have to say about that, but you know, the occasional handout, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the persistent feeding daily at a specified time, I think, can create some unwanted behavior. So anyway, that's my little rant. I'm going to step down off my soapbox. Let's get into tonight's featured species, which is the redhead, which is a species that we tend to see more during migrations. They tend to winter a little south of here. They are a gorgeous duck. They are sometimes, I know I sometimes struggle with this species here. This is the canvasback. You see that the species name for the, is, I Thea americana.
Beautiful pictures of redhead ducks.
Yes, yes, there are. um, on the left, though, that's not a redhead, that's a canvasback, and it's kind of a close cousin to the redhead. The canvasback is Athea vallisneria. Vallisneria is an aquatic plant. It happens to be a favorite food of the canvasback duck. So much a favorite that they actually named the species after it. But these birds are moving through. A few years ago, I thought this was kind of an interesting side note on the winter that we've had. When I saw the redheads here a few years ago, I was watching them in February at Potawatomi Park. Now, the river froze solid at Potawatomi when we had our deep freeze a few weeks ago. So the place to look for these ducks now is, as well as the other migrating species, when we're talking about St. Charles, it would be downstream of downtown. So kind of from that pedestrian bridge south. When you go south of the Prairie Street Bridge, there's some nice riffles a little farther down, kind of near Mount St. Mary's. And then probably most telling, and maybe one of the biggest reasons why that's a great spot for duck watching, is the outflow for the city's water treatment plant comes in just across from Langham Woods. Devereaux Way is this side street there on Route 25. And there's actually a little parking lot there if you want to park there and walk over. It's a great spot to see lots of waterfowl activity, including these guys and the other ones we mentioned, the mergansers and the golden eyes, a few buffleheads. We even saw a hooded merganser recently. So very cool, cool species that is making its way through. Here's a look, thanks to our friends at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They're all about birds website has this map, and it shows us that they're headed for the northern plains states and the Great Plains of southern Canada as well. They breed in that area, and that is where they exhibit a really interesting behavior. Amongst waterfowl species or duck species, the redhead is a champion brood parasite. Now, I think we've touched on brood parasitism in the past when we've talked about the cowbird. The brown-headed cowbird is rather famous for its tendency to lay its eggs in other birds' nests. It's not that unusual of a behavior. A lot of birds will parasitize other birds' nests. They tend, though, to stay within their species. The red-headed duck is notable for parasitizing birds within its species, as well as birds in other species. Check out this list. This, again, is from the All About Birds website. But just a few of the species that they might lay their eggs in include the mallard, that canvasback that we just looked at, pintail ducks, gadwalls, northern shovelers, ruddies, American widgeon. And I thought it was really interesting that they'll even drop eggs in the northern harrier, which is not a waterfowl species at all. But they are a bird of prey, but they happen to nest on the ground. And a common name for the northern harrier is the marsh hawk. So there's a similarity of habitat there. And I guess the braver of the red-headed hens will even attempt to drop an egg or two in amongst the northern harriers. Now, I don't know what the success rate is of a duck egg that's laid in a bird of prey nest like that, because the young harriers have to be fed by their parents. And of course, most of our ducks, when they hatch, they're what we would call precocial, which means they're ready to walk around and feed themselves as soon as they dry off, once they've emerged from the egg. They do, though, tend to imprint on what they see first when they hatch. So I guess there might be some red-headed ducklings out there that think they're hawks, which of course reminds me of foghorn leghorn and the little bird that used to follow him around. Remember, he'd say, you know, I'm not a chicken, I'm a chicken hawk. I'm digressing again. But anyway, redheaded hens will lay their eggs in a lot of birds' nests. As it turns out, they females do quite a bit of decision making when they arrive on those breeding grounds up there in the northern plains. She's got to first of all figure out, am I in good enough shape to lay eggs at all? Remember, migration is really hard on birds, and after they've made a journey like that, she might not have the body fat reserve. She may have sustained some injuries. She might be older. So first of all, she's got to decide, am I going to lay eggs or am I not going to lay eggs? And then she needs to decide, am I going to lay my eggs in another bird's nest? Once she's determined that, then she'll decide, okay, do I want to make a nest of my own? Do I have enough fat reserves? Am I young enough? Am I fit enough? Do I want to lay eggs in another duck's nest and make my own? Do I want to choose my own species? Or do I want to parasitize the nest of other species? So all these thoughts go through her little duck brain once they arrive on their breeding territories. The males, they don't play a big role, as we see across most of the duck species. That's not true of our geese, but of our ducks, the males kind of, you know, they're once their business is over with, they kind of go off on their own. It is kind of interesting though, the vocalizations of these two. I'm going to do my best to imitate them. The female has your basic, you know, whack, 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 whack. But the males, they have a couple of vocalizations during the breeding season that sound like cats. One is kind of a meow, 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 like a cat's meow, and then there's also a that's like a cat's purr, which is kind of cool too. Might want to practice those on your own, see if you can outdo me. But the vocalizations of this bird are interesting as well. So she's got a lot of thinking that she needs to do. And it's something that kind of distinguishes redhead ducks from the other duck species that we have here in North America. Makes them even extra cool when you have that background knowledge. So keep an eye out for them in these next couple of weeks. They're going to be moving through now fairly soon with our warm weather coming. They're going to want to get up north and get down to the next business at hand. Now, when she gets up there, she's going to be looking around to see the condition of the marsh and what the food availability is, what the host availability is. And again, those other considerations that we mentioned earlier, is she in good enough shape herself? Is she old enough? And you might be thinking, well, my goodness, why does she do this at all? Well, if she can, even if she's not in that good of shape, if she's able to produce just a few eggs, she might not have the fitness to defend a nest, but laying an egg in another bird's nest is actually not all that hard. The sitting female there, she may try to defend, but she also has to keep her own fitness in shape. And it costs the sitting hen very little to incubate a few more eggs. So the parasitism can go on without a whole lot. Now, I don't know what happens when the hen, redhead hen, tries to lay an egg in a northern harrier's nest, but most of the other ducks, they'll let the eggs come in without a great deal of disruption, because they don't want to harm themselves. They don't want to harm their eggs, because eggs, you know, are kind of fragile. So anyway, the reason behind that is that the whole idea behind the parasitism is that the successful hatching, the chances of it might be less, but it requires no investment at all on the part of the female laying the eggs. So just kind of a neat, another thing to keep in mind when we see this cool species as it moves through. Usually we leave reader emails to the end, but I thought this one was interesting because it kind of pertains to some other things that are going on right now. And I wanted to put it a little bit sooner here in the lineup. This is a couple that reads the column in the newspaper, and they see eagles every year. That these are probably not resident eagles. These are birds that are coming down from, say, Wisconsin. As the waters freeze up there, they come down here to feed. They noted that they arrive later than usual, but they're enjoying them. These people take very close watch, take very careful notes of the birds that they see. And they noticed that they're seeing both the immature birds and as well as the adults. But they noted that the immatures appear to be much larger than the mature birds, which struck them as odd. They said they also have a slightly longer tail. And they did, as so many people do, they noted that they look similar to golden eagles. But of course, golden eagles are very rare in this area. That got me to thinking, what is the reason behind this? And my first thought actually was to do with the cold. When a bird is in cold weather, they'll fluff their feathers. That creates more air pockets between the feathers, and that air acts as insulation. But I did a little bit more research, and guess what? Immature eagles are bigger than the adults. Maybe you guys already knew this. I didn't. It was news to me. I thought it was pretty neat. Their wing primaries are a few centimeters longer, and their tail feathers too are longer. Now, overall, the bird does tend to weigh less than a mature eagle does. Their beak and their talons are not as long as the adults. That the reason for that is the buildup of keratin as the bird ages. The beak and the talons are kind of the same material that our fingernails are made out of, just a whole lot more of it. And that gets thicker and stronger as the bird ages. But with each successive molt, as a immature eagle grows, each time they shed their feathers and grow new ones, those new feathers come in a few to several millimeters shorter than the feathers that they're replacing. So the tail feathers, especially that's the more noticeable length to look at. The when the birds are in flight, I was looking at some photos of eagles in flight, and eagles are notorious food stealers. They'll steal from each other. They'll steal from other fish-eating birds. And I looked at some photos of immature birds trying to steal fish from the talons of mature eagles. And the wing, the primary feathers at the end of the wing do have a little bit different character to them. They're longer and pointier. And it's just kind of a neat gee whiz thing that if you didn't know, now you do. And if you did know, well, now I can join that club with you. This is also important because Bob and Kathy Andrini from King County Audubon will be presenting next week, a week from this Thursday, at the Geneva, not at, because everything's virtual, but for the Geneva Public Library. You can go to the library's website, gpld.org, if you'd like to sign up. But they're going to be presenting on bald eagles. A little bit about the history and what makes this bird such a vital part of our local ecosystems. Now, this is a photo that was sent to me several years ago by a photographer named Ron Dickinson. He, as so many photographers in this area like to do, he was observing the mooseheart bald eagles. Can you see what this eagle has in its talons? It was bringing it back for the eaglets of that year. I believe that this was either 2015 or 2016. That's a redhead duck. So yes, eagles, they eat a lot of fish, but they eat waterfowl too that will glean from roadkill. They are pretty opportunistic, and in fact, some people consider them scavengers. But anyway, this redhead duck did not make it to its breeding grounds that particular year. Perhaps it was older, perhaps it didn't have the body fat, all those things we were just talking about in terms of bird fitness. Anyway, it fed some eagles that year. Kind of a circle of life and a circular connection to our program tonight. There it is. You can see the redhead. You can see the dark tip on the end of the beak. Can't really see the eyes anymore, but yep, one less redhead that year. Now let's move on. This is a topic that I have, and we all have our bucket lists and things we want to do, things we want to see, things we want to find when we're out in nature. And this is something that I always look for. If I come upon a deer carcass that's been predated, that's kind of torn apart, but there's still, you know, some of the parts left, some of the organs that are left, particularly the stomach and the digestive tract. This is something that forms, they're called madstones, bezoars, enteroliths. It's something that forms in the deer's digestive tract. If it's feeding and it ingests something that's indigestible and it can't pass it through, it might be some baling wire. It might be a stone if it's, you know, grazing in a field and it swallows a rock. Well, the deer's digestive tract is just as in a similar fashion to the way a freshwater mussel or an oyster will form a pearl. The deer's digestive tract will deposit minerals around the indigestible item, and it forms these stones in the deer's digestive tract, and they kind of stay there till the animal dies. Now, these stones have sort of a mystical and mythical quality about them. Back in the day, before we had a good understanding of what caused various diseases, there was all kinds of different folk remedies for different things. And madstones were thought to be able to cure rabies. This made the madstone or the bezoar carry great value, especially in areas where there might not have been good access to qualified physicians. The madstone was thought to be able to cure rabies by being able to withdraw the poison that was put into the body of the person that had been bitten. So here's a little illustration showing a madstone being applied. Believe it or not, I did quite a bit of reading up on this. Not that I ever planned to use it, but the madstone would be boiled in milk, and that would sort of start to dissolve some of the outer coating of some of the outer material, and it would make it somewhat sticky. That stone would then be applied to the area of the bite, and then when it would stick on, that was thought to begin the process of withdrawing the what they at that time called poison, but what we now know is the virus that causes rabies. And there were, of course, even people who claimed to have been cured by them, but chances are the animal that bit them wasn't actually rabid. But it caused madstones to have high value placed on them. They were handed down from generation to generation. They were traded for, they were sold. And like I said, they have attained this sort of mythical state in my own mind, and I'm always on the lookout for them. So, if there's a deer that's not as lucky as this one, you can bet that, first of all, the wildlife will be after it. Once it's the deer is torn open and the digestive tract is displayed, chances are there might be me and a coyote and an eagle poking around just to see what it is that we can find. But that's the story of the Madstone. Now, these photos come to us from our friend Chris Madsen, and you can tell these are from actually last week when we still had snow. It's disappearing at a rapid rate. But Chris took these on the Fox River up here by, I believe it was by Norris Woods. And it was just a really neat formation that appeared as this animal went across the Fox River. By the way, as the ice recedes now on the river, that is going to change animals. There's a lot of animals that take advantage of the river when it's frozen to move around. It increases the areas that they have to forage in. They can go back and forth a lot easier on top of the ice than they can if they're swimming. But I wasn't exactly sure who made these tracks. Chris was thinking possibly deer. Might have been the tracks on the right here that are close together. That almost makes me think raccoon, but it caught Chris's photographer's eye at the way the snow gathered around the impressions that were made. We also have a phenomenon with our river ice that I believe is due to the chloride content that doesn't always freeze. Well, it freezes solid, but on top of the ice, it has a kind of a slushy character until things get really cold. And I think that's what happened here is the ice had that slushiness to it. The animal walked across it. We dropped down, temperatures dropped down into our deep freeze range, and the tracks froze in that protruding sort of fashion, and then the blowing snow gathered around it. But just kind of a cool wildlife made piece of art there in the Fox River that definitely had a limited time engagement. Chris sent us another couple of photos. This showed a creature, a squirrel, leaving a tree, and as they do, hopped across the yard. However, as Chris noted, he said he doesn't think it was a flying squirrel. It was probably something else that was flying that ended the squirrel's journey before it got to the other side of the yard. You see the tracks end pretty abruptly right there. No wing prints, so it was probably a pretty clean pickoff, although Chris was kind of wondering if we look here, does that not look kind of like owl feather tufts? And a great horned owl is a powerful flyer. They're a very strong bird. Picking out, if this was a gray squirrel, they only weigh about a pound. Now, a great horned owl only weighs a little over 3 pounds, but again, they're very strong, and they have the advantage of silent flight, so they probably surprised the heck out of that squirrel. Anyway, just another story in the snow, and possibly our last story in the snow, at least for this part of 2021. Now, bird song. We're starting to hear a lot of voices. That sounds bad, voices in your head. No, what I'm referring to is the song of birds as they are declaring their territories and communicating with their mates. I took this video last week, one day when I was walking to, and listen here for a minute. We can hear the chip notes as well as the birdie, birdie, birdie song of the northern cardinal. And our thinking, especially in this area, is that, oh, it's the males that are declaring the territory, they're defending the territory. It's the female's job to then come in and set up housekeeping, build the nest, take care of the young, sometimes with the help of the male, sometimes not. However, in this case, this was not the male, this was the female. Can't really see her, but she was in, I didn't want to get too close. She was in this, this shrub here next to the house. And she was just singing away. Those chip notes were coming from the male. Let's listen again. As she's singing, you can hear the chip, 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 chip of the male. Cardinals are actually, this isn't really new information. Cardinals are one of the species where the male and the female both sing. Well, there's been some studies done. Well, people have been studying birdsong for as long as they've been studying birds. But recently, there's been some studies looking at not just who's doing the singing amongst birds, but who's doing the listening amongst humans. There's been recently 2 studies that have looked at these old, now this study that we're looking at here, this was from 2014, but there was another study in 2019. It was just published in 2020, looking at who's looking at birdsong. And there were a couple of things that kind of bubbled to the surface. One was that a lot of the focus on singing birds was done on species that live in temperate climates, not tropical climates, but places like this, North America, Europe. And those studies were done by men. And so there was the inference anyway of some bias that was occurring. And so the thinking that it's the males doing the singing is kind of been passed around. But when we start to look at birds around the world, we start to see that there's actually a lot of bird species where both the male and the female will sing. Now this study, you'll notice there's a lot of families here that are not present around here: lyrebirds, Australasian wrens, thornbills, honey eaters. But the orioles, we have orioles in this area, and yes, the female Baltimore oriole does sing too. Crows and jays, both the sexes are very vocal. It's just kind of a neat thing to consider. I know it has me thinking more closely about what I'm listening to, what I'm hearing, and who it is that is making that sound. So it's not always the guys. Sometimes it's the ladies piping in as well. So the temperatures are warming. I actually heard that we've got some 60s in our future, which is just unbelievable, considering just a couple of weeks ago we were hovering at 0 and below. But let's see, this was on Friday. It wasn't terribly warm on Friday morning. I would say it was in the upper 30s. It was a pretty good breeze, but it was from the south, as I recall. But I was out and I heard a sound, and as so often happens, whether it's birds returning in the spring or wildflowers popping up or even the spring mushrooms, it kind of takes my brain just a few minutes to kind of reconnect to the current season. Well, anyway, I heard a Killdeer was flying over. And these birds are very vocal. And as it turns out, they are on their way back. They are shorebirds. They're plovers, and plovers are mostly shorebirds. But of course, Killdeers can be found anywhere from cornfields and soccer fields to building rooftops and parking lots. So they are pushing their way back north, which I thought was a great sign of spring. Certainly not a bird that we expect to see here in the winter like we do, as we talked last week, with our robins. And then yesterday I was at a meeting at Hickory Knolls, and I was leaving the park. I was driving towards Campton Hills Road, and we've got a lot of geese that, as the snow is now melting away from the turf on the athletic fields there, the geese are coming back to feed. And I drove by these two, and I stopped and looked carefully behind me, but then I backed up. This is another sign of spring. The geese are starting to pair off. So if you look in the background of this photo, you can see there's still some flocking behavior going on. These might be younger birds that are hanging out together in groups, but here's a mom and a pop. Here's dad. This is another way, you know, Canada geese are, the males and the females are very similar, but the behavior will often give them off. The male he's a little bit bigger and he's always more watchful. The female, her focus right now is on getting in shape to lay those eggs and raise those oodles of young that they're going to have. And so she tends to have her eye on the grass, or she might be down feeding, and he's the more watchful of the pair. But anyway, yet another sign of spring. Thought that was kind of cool, kind of exciting as we head towards those 60-degree temperatures. Now, here's another sign of spring, and this is a little bit more unusual. If you're really good with your shrub ID, or if you look at these raised parts of the bark here, you might recognize this as an elderberry branch. If you've been to my house, you might recognize that as my kitchen floor. So what's elderberry doing on Miss Pam's kitchen floor? Well, it is maple tapping season. And I don't have any sugar maple trees in my yard, but I do have a silver maple tree. And I did tap it one other year, years ago. When I worked at Red Oak, I accidentally brought a spile home. A spile is the name for that little spigot that you tap into the tree, and that then diverts the sap out into a bucket. I had a spile. I had it in my pocket. I tapped it in the tree, got a little bit of sap out. It was pretty late in the season. It wasn't really that successful of a tap, but I've always had it in my head that, you know, someday I'm going to get back to tapping trees again. Well, not having any spiles, but having elderberries, I remembered how when we used to teach about how the early settlers and the Native Americans would tap trees, this creating of a tool from available material was, we would always talk about elderberry and how the pith of the elderberry, it's very spongy and soft. It comes out really easily. I picked, lopped off that elderberry cane that you saw in the previous picture, and I cut a length that was, this piece is about 4.5 inches long. I whittled one end of it down, and I pushed I used a Phillips head screwdriver. I had a really long shanked screwdriver that I just kind of twisted and pushed, and the pith, it comes out really easily. I've heard that you can also heat a screwdriver or a piece of metal up and push the pith out that way, but I didn't find the heat was necessary. So I also had a food grade bucket. You can get these, a lot of restaurants have them. This one ages ago, I think had pickles in it, but the pickle smell is long gone. If the pickle smell is fresh, you're not going to want to use it to catch your sap. But you can also go to like Jewel and the stores that have in-house bakeries. They will get frosting in big buckets, and they're usually anxious to get rid of them. If they don't give them to you for free, they charge you maybe $1 or $2, but you can get a food grade bucket pretty easily around here. So I positioned the bucket beneath the spile. I used a 7/16 inch drill bit. Well, actually, all right, so that's the official story, is I used the right bit the first time. what I actually did was I used the wrong bit the first time and it got stuck in the tree. That's the part you don't see in this photo. But I got the spile tapped in, and some days you get it in and you drill that hole and the drill bit comes out wet. That didn't happen today, and I thought, oh gosh, maybe I've lost my touch. But after, I would say, oh, this was maybe half hour or so later. There it goes. Another sign of spring. What's going on right now, and why this is the time to tap trees, is we've got our cold temperatures at night, and we've got our warmer temperatures during the day. That's sending a couple of signals. There's some pressure changes that go on when a tree heats up during the day. That's going to expand the cells. That's going to cause the stored sugars that have been down on the roots. Those are going to start to push up. What the tree is trying to achieve is getting that energy up to the branches where the leaf buds are. That sugar, if it's not diverted into a food grade bucket, would be used to grow the leaves that are going to nourish the tree for the year. That sugar was made, that's in that sap, was made from last year's leaves. So the sap is running. It's probably been going for a while now, especially since we had that warm spell towards the end of last week. But now's the time. And you're probably looking at this going, Pam, that's a silver maple, not a sugar maple. Well, let's talk for just a second about the maple species. Sugar maple, of course, is what is widely recognized as the best tree to tap. Acer saccharum is the name of that maple. The name of the silver maple, which I have here, is Acer saccharinum. So again, saccharin, sugar, they both have a good quality sugar. The thing is, the sap in the silver maple is much, much more watery. When you tap a sugar maple, and I think black maples kind of fall into the same category, their sugar content is pretty high. You need about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. When you're tapping a silver maple, you need about 80 gallons. So a lot of boiling is going to need to occur. Now, I'm not looking to get 80 gallons. I'm just looking to get a few ounces. I figure if I can get 5 gallons of sap, that'll give me maybe 8 ounces or so of syrup, if I'm able to boil it down and finish it off. And that's plenty to say that I did it. It also got me to thinking that there are actually lots of different trees. These first few species here are maples, sugar, black, red, silver. Box elders, they also are, another name for a box elder tree is ash leaf maple. They are also in that Acer genus. And again, some people say the box elder syrup is, it doesn't have a pleasant flavor. That sugar doesn't have a pleasant flavor. I have people who tell me that they tap box elders all the time because they like the stronger flavor. Norway maples, I didn't add that to the list. They're not a native species, but we certainly have a lot of Norway maples in this area, and you can tap those as well. Again, not as fine a quality of sugar, but certainly tappable. I started doing some research into other types of syrup. It turns out the birches make a pretty tasty syrup, a pretty expensive syrup if you've ever priced birch syrup. But around here we have river birches. I have a white birch, possibly a paper birch. I'm not sure of the exact species that is planted in my front yard. Birch, those types of birch aren't native to this area, and they don't tend to last very long. And mine has lost 2 of its 3 trunks. So I'm not sure if I want to poke a hole in it and then risk having it fall over on my car someday. But the thought has crossed my mind of trying to tap a birch tree. Walnut, black walnuts make a fabulous, very uniquely flavored syrup. Something that, and we certainly have a lot of walnuts around here, something you might want to try if you've got a walnut tree in your yard. Butternut is also in the Euglins genus. It's a cousin to the black walnut. Butternut syrup is supposed to be fantastic, but butternuts are, they're very susceptible to a canker disease that we have in this area. We don't have many butternuts left. So if you're traveling to an area, or if you know somebody who lives in an area where butternuts are healthy, might try tapping them there, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it around here. Sycamore is supposed to have a good, although very watery syrup. So you need to plan to do a lot of boiling. And then elm syrup as well. If you've got a healthy elm tree, you know, elms, they have their own problems too with Dutch elm, although we do see a fair number of species of specimen trees around here that seem to either be resistant or have been able to overcome the threat of Dutch elm. But these are all different types of trees that make good syrup. Now there's, I remember when we were looking for different things to kind of distinguish Hickory Knolls as the new nature center in the area, we looked at hickory syrup. You can actually buy shagbark hickory syrup online, but it is made by boiling the bark and then adding a bunch of sugar to it. That to me doesn't seem, you know, quite the same as tapping the sap of the shagbark hickory tree. If you've got a hickory in your yard and you're not afraid of poking a hole in it, you might want to try that and see what the actual sap comes out and tastes like. So anyway, maple syrup is, of course, the #1 tree, but there are lots of other options too, if you're so inclined. And let me know if you need any elderberry cane. I've got a ton of it at my house. Now, this was just a little late breaking thing that came on through email through John Sprovieri, who's the president at Kane County Audubon. He sent this out this evening. So if you're a member of Audubon, you've probably already gotten this in your email. If you're not a member, though, I thought it was worth mentioning. Tomorrow, our government here in Illinois is going to be voting on some legislation that's going to require that state buildings need to have standards that meet bird safe standards. So they're not putting up windows that birds are going to crash into, things that are going to try and help our migratory birds. You know, each year, millions of birds die by crashing into windows. And I believe, I haven't had a chance to look over this real thoroughly, but I believe the way it's worded here, it says each state building constructed, acquired, or substantially altered shall meet specified standards regarding bird safety. I don't know if that means only government buildings, but anything that's going to put more emphasis on bird safe construction, I'm all for. Again, if you're not a member of Audubon and you'd like me to forward that email to you, just let me know in the chat and I'll send it to you once the program has concluded, which it's about to do. I just wanted to throw this up one more time. We did get our April tickets loaded in, and every week the Good Natured program will be free in honor of Earth Day. I know a few of you have already signed up for those April programs. If you know somebody that you think might like this kind of thing, please feel free to invite them as well. There is a little bit of a registration process to go through, as there has been in the past. But we would very much like to get a few more folks signing in. And we thought by having a sale might be the way to do it. So anyway, with that, I'm going to end our screen share for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Does anybody have any questions, observations? Laura McKenzie, I know you texted me earlier that you've not only seen a red-winged blackbird, but you've also had a little change of attitude. That's awesome.
Yeah, I always found them kind of annoying and aggressive, and then you kind of changed my mind last week when you were saying that. A good sign for spring. So,
well, yeah, they're a sign of spring, and they are. I think we talked about last week how I just feel sorry for the guys. They've got, a minimum 2 mates that they're trying to keep track of. And they can have 5, sometimes 6 females so they're guarding over this massive territory with multiple mates, and they just get a little nuts. Who doesn't get a little nuts? We have to get much to do. So, and I think I shared that tip before too. If you find yourself being targeted by a red-winged blackbird, if you can at all shift your gaze or get your body situated so that you're looking eye to eye with them, it dramatically reduces the chance of you getting dive bombed, because the last thing they want to do is fly towards a face, because a face is generally connected to, if not hands, then claws. Imagine a cat having a bird fly towards its face. What's it going to do? It's going to knock it down. That bird doesn't want to injure itself. It just wants to get you to move along. So yeah, ways of living with our good friends, the Red Wings. Who are, yes, they're back. I saw one, he wasn't doing anything though. He looked like he was kind of exhausted, actually. He was sitting right across from Mount St. Mary's along the river. I had gone over to look. There's a group of geese with angel wing hanging out over there. Angel wing is that deformity that occurs. I haven't ever written about angel wing because I feel there's still more to be learned about it, but it's supposedly caused by an imbalanced diet. If birds have been fed, if they eat a lot of bread, if they don't consume their natural diet, it causes the wings to actually deform at the wrist, and the wings splay out and the birds can't fly anymore. So I was looking at the angel wings, and then I looked up and I saw I was being watched, but he wasn't making his call. He was just kind of sitting there like, whew, I got to catch my breath before I start defending. And Wallace says that you've got them at your feeders today. Welcome back. Yes, bread in particular is bad for feeding all kinds of birds. Yeah, it can, it fills them up, but it doesn't really provide the good, proper nutrients. Bread that's left in the water can actually create some dangerous conditions. Bad bacteria can start to grow there, and it can actually create kind of a toxin in the water as well. Yep, and Dreenies recommend putting your sunglasses on the back of your head. That's a great suggestion as well. That's way better. I used to say to stick googly eyes on a baseball cap. There's not a lot of grownups who want to walk around with the jiggly eyes, stuck on the back of their head. I had one friend who did it on the back of his bike helmet, and that worked. But looks like we got a couple of people here who would like the bird safe email. I'll get that off to you, Jerry. Yes, Mrs. Tricia has reminded me, I was going to put a slide in about this, and I just thought I would break it to you in person. Dining room spider has gone to that big web in the sky. You haven't tuned in before. Dining room spider was a grass spider that had taken up residence between my screen and dining room window. I brought her in, she made an egg case, and then she didn't die. She hung on for almost 3 more months. But I went to feed her on Saturday, and I thought she looked a little strange. She was moving, and she was kind of tipped over on her side. I pulled her out, and she actually died with her her rear foot, her last set of legs at the back of her body. She had one foot in her mouth. And I don't know if that was like, was she biting her nails? Was she grooming? I don't know what that was, but I thought it was kind of interesting. She's right now enshrined in a little box. She's still in the dining room, but yeah, sorry to break that news to you. I will keep you posted on her eggs though, because I would imagine as things start to warm up, we'll have a little, well, about 200 maybe blessed little events that I'll probably put outside. Yeah, I'm sorry, Susie. Yeah, but there'll be more. There'll be more, and she certainly kept me company all throughout our COVID winter. Any other questions, stories, comments, news from abroad? No. All right. Well, I hope we see you back again next week. It's great to see everybody this evening. Look forward to more signs of spring. That will certainly be a focus of next week's program, along with lots of other late breaking nature news. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Take care now.
Thank you. It
Thanks,
was great
Pam.
again.
Good to
Very
see ya.
good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye.
That's
Thanks,
great.
Pam.
Pam. Thank you.
So long.